A phallic but deadly ensemble, letters fashioned into a weaponized garment, and possibly the boldest thematic hairstyle I have ever seen. Typeface was a fairly short-lived villain from Spider-Man comics. He made his first appearance in Peter Parker Spider-Man issue number 23. Initially, Typeface was villain Gordon Thomas. After suffering much misfortune in his life and being laid off from the only job that gave him solace, creating signs, he decided to become a villain, aiming to get retribution. He took a grease pencil and wrote a bunch of letters on his face, that big R on his forehead for retribution, and he also donned a bunch of letters, wearing them on his clothes and sometimes kind of like a necklace of sorts. This was his look. Now, he didn't really have any powers, just a passion for fonts and letters, although he was military trained, so at least he had that. His time as a criminal was quite short, as he was pretty quickly inspired by Spider-Man actually, and a memory of his brother, to seek redemption instead of retribution. But even his time as a hero also was not really that long, probably in part due to how ridiculous his outfit and his gimmick was as Typeface. He literally fought people by throwing letters at one point, so that's kind of where we're at. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, don't miss out on any of our content by clicking that subscribe button, and make sure you have that bell. Hit that bell so you can get all the notifications when we have new content for you. Number 9. Kite Man. I love Kite Man, but no matter what suit I see him in, pretty much all of them are ridiculous because, well, I mean, he's so ridiculous. Kite Man has to be one of the highlights of the Harley Quinn animated series. Although I'm a bit behind right now, to be honest, he has been one of the greatest characters that stand out to me from that show, and honestly, I love how much dimension they give Kite Man. Like, this show made me such a Kite Man fan, and even though, yeah, I think his suit is dumb, that doesn't mean that I don't love Kite Man. When it comes to his suit, of course, it is pretty dumb because, I mean, well, he wears a kite on his back, that's pretty ridiculous, which he uses, or attempts to use, to commit crimes. But that doesn't mean I love him any less. In fact, I probably love him even more because of how dumb his look and his gimmick are. Hell yeah! Number 8. Original Kang the Conqueror. Even though I do love Kang, and also I personally do love his look, even I cannot deny that he looks absolutely ridiculous. From the helmet to the tunic down to the metallic adornments on his outfit here. This look is definitely one that seems to have emerged from a time storm, but I wouldn't necessarily guess from the future myself. Although something that you do have to admire and admit about it is that it is iconic, it's striking, and it stands out. The original Kang look was created by Jack Kirby, who truly is a legendary artist, and despite the fact that, you know, this look now feels dated, the fact remains that this costume has pretty much remained the same throughout the character's long history, which I think is a testament to, you know, how striking and iconic it is. When it comes to his standard look, you know, this is pretty much it. So yes, it might seem ridiculous, but it certainly is memorable, and despite being silly, is still very clearly loved by a lot of us. Even in the MCU, they pretty much left this look as is. They just kind of like texturized it, I think, a little bit, and other than that, I mean, it looks great in the MCU, even though objectively ridiculous. Number 7. New 52 Riddler. I love the Riddler as a villain, but not all of his looks have been smash hits. Included in the lot that are not so great is his redesign from the New 52. We first see him, I believe, as an inmate in Arkham Asylum there. He wears a bandana with 2 holes cut out as, you know, places for his eyes to go, the usual Arkham inmate suit, and of course sports that famous, but honestly very terrible, green question mark mohawk, but trimmed all the way down. It's definitely a look, but it's not a look that I'm really a fan of for Riddler, I will tell you that. I like New 52 Riddler the best when he's in a suit decorated with question marks. Even the Jim Carrey version of this character in question mark bespeckled spandex is way preferred to me over this look. Fortunately, as New 52 would go on, this design would evolve and change. Thank goodness. New 52 was an interesting time for a lot of people in redesigns. Number 6. Marvel Now High Evolutionary. Everyone right now wants to talk about how great the High Evolutionary is, and I get it. In Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, he was a horrific villain, and Chukwudi Iwuji nailed the role completely. He really made for a good and true classic villain, but let's take a look at the High Evolutionary in the comics. What is he like? Well, he's about as ridiculous looking as the harebrained science schemes he ends up involved in. I can tell you that much. While pretty much every look he's had looks completely weird to me, I think one of the most strange, for me personally, is the one he wore during the 2012 Marvel Now event. Here he donned his normal metal suit, but with more added studs. Number 5. Calendar Man's Calendar Cape. I mean, you have to give him some points for super committing, but the Calendar Man cape is pretty objectively ridiculous, I would say. This costume at least also came with somewhat of an improved gimmick with more deadly weapons at his disposal as well. I believe the first appearance of the Calendar Cape was in issue 312 of Batman. Instead of him being a magician who is secretly a criminal, fond of riddles and various antics tied to days of the week, holidays, and even seasons, this time around Calendar Man was more fixated on the days of the week and the gods that they were named after, theming many of his crimes around them. Although, to be honest, if I were going to cosplay as Calendar Man, I would definitely wear a calendar cape. Number 4. Shocker. I mean, Shocker is just all around pretty ridiculous in the comics, I think. I think we can all agree on that, and his costume is no exception. Shocker basically looks like he took a sofa, gutted it, and turned it into his costume, which perhaps makes sense when you consider his abilities. He typically attempts to shock Spider-Man, so perhaps being insulated helps him to protect himself against his own shock-inducing weapons? I don't know. Still, you can't deny that even if there is some kind of practical use for this look, that he doesn't look absolutely ridiculous in it, because he definitely does. And honestly, I'm not really even sure if there's a practical use for this suit. I'm just trying to help make it make sense. I want it to make sense, but I don't know if there is a reason for why he wears it. Number 3. Batman the Animated Series Condiment King. Condiment King is one of my all-time favorite villains because he simply is so ridiculous. What can I say? I'm a sucker for ridiculous dumb characters, especially villains. But him also being a villain armed to the teeth with condiments also means he's gonna look pretty ridiculous as he roams the town, squirting people with ketchup and mustard. That being said, his look in the animated series still takes the cake for one of the dumbest of all of his looks. Of course, this was done on purpose. You can tell pretty much everyone that has designed a Condiment King look is, in on the joke. What I really love about this ridiculous look is the fact that he's literally wearing white underwear over his suit, which is just hilarious. Such a play on ridiculous costumes in general. Costumes that we think look great, but are still kind of ridiculous. Also white underwear when you're firing condiments. Dangerous. Number 2. First MODOK. The very first appearance of MODOK was in Tales of Suspense issue number 94. This design is another created by Jack Kirby, which throughout the years has mainly remained unchanged. Sure, there have been different MODOKs and some alternate looks offered to us, but the main MODOK look has pretty much remained about the same. A suit that contains a giant head with little limbs fully sheathed in purple metal, and all seemingly floating and contained by a hover chair which MODOK uses to get around. The implication here is that his little legs can no longer support the weight of his massive head and brain. The look is ridiculous, sure, but it really does help MODOK to stand out. And it's also this dumb look that has kind of helped to inform his character over the years, which also I love. While he often yearns to be as terrifying as the words that his name stands for implies, he also is just super ridiculous. Number 1. Codpiece's Codpiece. Codpiece, of course, is none other than a Doom Patrol villain because, well, I mean, look at this guy. His whole thing is weapons. A very specific weapon located in a very specific place. It's a big red gun that he wears on a harness, acting as a weaponized, codpiece. Why this costume? Why this gimmick? That's a good question. Because when he was in high school, he once asked a girl out and she turned him down for being quote unquote too small. Now, she didn't mean what he thought she did, she meant simply that he was too short. Misinterpreting this and seeking to prove himself, he became the criminal known as Codpiece. In the comics, I believe he was a one and done villain. I feel like I'd be nervous wearing a costume like this because if someone shot back at your weapon, the location of it might result in you being damaged in some pretty sensitive parts. So definitely makes sense that he was a one and done villain though. I mean, I feel like, what else are you gonna do with this guy? Number 10. Wolverine's Patch Disguise. Wolverine's Patch Disguise. Okay, bub, so you know I'm a big Wolverine fan, and if you follow me elsewhere on the interwebs, you may also know I'm a big Patch fan. However, even I, a major fan, can acknowledge how ridiculous this look and disguise is. While the Gambit miniseries we got recently did help to justify Gambit's kind of weird costume choices, the Patch miniseries definitely did not do that. Although that miniseries, written by Wolverine writing legend Larry Hama, which takes us back in time for an untold tale from the Patch era, is still amazing, and you should definitely check it out. The funny thing is how even in the comics, the other characters who interact with Patch and Madripoor eventually fess up to the fact that they pretty much always knew Patch was Wolverine, admitting that his attempt at a disguise is as ridiculous and dumb as we all thought it was. Still, I do love the Patch look, so this is more me pointing out how silly it is, as opposed to dumb in like a bad way. This is actually a lovably dumb superhero suit, I would say. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like button. Number 9. Superman Red and Blue. Admittedly, these designs are actually kind of really cool, but it's more the power sets that come with them and how they attempted to, in essence, reset Superman with these looks that makes them kind of dumb. Although I do admire DC for wanting to change up the design and the character, which honestly was a revolutionary choice. The fact remains that this is comics, and returning to a status quo, especially for a character as old and as respected as Supes, is kinda necessary, which is why this didn't really work and a lot of people didn't really like it. Number 8. Swordsman. I don't know about you, but I personally find Jacques Duquesne's look a little silly. Like, what is happening with that helmet? Is that a helmet? It's not, right? Because it's like attached to his whole outfit, which is also really weird. What's happening there? Also, I don't mind the tunic and the tights, but the weird pink and purple color combination here is interesting for color choices. At least that's how I see the colors. I don't know if you guys see pink and purple, but that's what I'm seeing here. And the fact that while he has gloves on to protect his hands, he has nothing to cover his arms, except for, I guess, those arm bands. What are the arm bands for? Are they supposed to protect him, or are they like just for adornment? The thing I love about the modern look for the Kotati version of this character, by comparison to the original human swordsman who first appeared in Marvel Comics back in the 60s, is that at least this plant version, while still not having full sleeves, had the improved design of wearing bracers. Honestly, I think that makes more sense for a master swordsman rather than gloves and armbands. And also, just for context, I was talking about the original swordsman design there, so. Number 7. Azrael's Batman. As per Saya Dubray's suggestion from the comments on part 1 of this list, I had to include Jean-Paul Valley's Batman outfit here. You're completely right, Saya. It is one of the most 90s outfits around. And while I am a big fan of dumb 90s outfits, that doesn't make them any less dumb. It just means that I love things that are dumb, which is I think fine. And this outfit is definitely included in the list of dumb 90s outfits for sure. From the weird cape collar to the metal accents and back again to the insane amount of muscle definition that we can see through what must be the tightest fitting outfit ever. Also, metal garters. I mean, having a metal garter on your leg, I imagine that has to be uncomfortable. Number 6. Wolverine's no nose. Wolverine's nose is not really a suit at all, but it is a whole look that Wolverine had for a time that was bizarre, and I thought, hey, if Tony's iron nose can make the cut on AJ's part 1, it's important that I also include Wolverine's nose on part 2 here. While Iron Man having a nose added to his suit was weird for the character, Wolverine had the opposite problem of completely losing his nose, which was also weird for the character. However, at least this was more of a stylistic choice inspired by the story than, you know, an arbitrary change to the design based on where Iron Man's eyes are. So I will at least say that in the defense of this pretty strange look for the character. It came as a result of Wolverine having the adamantium coating ripped from his bones by Magneto, which also turned him feral. For a few years he'd become more bestial in nature than he normally was, which apparently also meant his nose, I guess, had to go, becoming more of a flat central spot on his face with 2 nostrils. Kinda like became pushed into his face almost. I mean, honestly, this version of Wolverine almost becomes unrecognizable when you take the nose off. Number 5. Smallville's Aquaman. Whether we're talking sleeves or no sleeves, second generation or first generation, the Aquaman look for Smallville was pretty ridiculous and honestly kinda dumb in a bad way. While I typically try to approach dumb lists with less of that kind of outlook because, you know, dumb doesn't always have to mean bad, and it definitely doesn't usually mean bad for me, this costume in my opinion is actually pretty atrocious. I honestly, I don't really like this one. Honestly, I think I'd rather have the Golden Age look with the weird fins on his arms and his legs over this one. It just looks like a weird jogging outfit to me, and I know it's probably supposed to be like a wetsuit, but no, just let's pretend it didn't happen. Except we can't because it's on this list, so now we all have to remember it. Number 4. The Crossing Thor. I mean, everyone in The Crossing looked pretty wild, but Thor is definitely up there for me personally. The Crossing is the event where we learned that this whole time Iron Man had been basically a sleeper agent for Immortus, aka an alternate timeline version of Kang the Conqueror. The whole time! Dun dun dun! In honor of this very important and historical time, Thor and many of the other Avengers ended up with kind of new looks. Now, Thor's costume was definitely the most 90s look I think I've ever seen. The only thing it's missing really for me is pouches, honestly. What it lacks in pouches though, it makes up for with everything else in abundance. Tons of chains and elaborate excessive harnesses, and one of those weird like face masks that covers part of your face, like the sides and the top, but leaves a hole on the top of it for your hair to come out. And of course, I believe this was actually supposed to be what future Thor was meant to look like in this comic, in like another timeline, despite this look truly screaming 90s. In the story, this appeared to be a vision that we got of what a future Thor would look like. Now, thank goodness that hasn't ended up happening in this current timeline, at least not yet anyways. I don't know, that might still be somewhere lurking. Number 3. Star Sapphire. When it comes to Star Sapphire, Carol Ferris, she isn't always a hero and she isn't always a villain either. She's kind of done both of those things. She served both roles, but either way, she usually does so pretty ridiculously dressed, I gotta be honest. I mean, not always. She's had some reasonable costume designs and some that I've liked, but for this point, I'm focusing on her one-piece bathing suit-like costume with the middle of it cut out to the point that it becomes theoretically, structurally unsound, I'd say. For the record, I don't mind a woman who shows off her body. In fact, you know, I too enjoy that, both as a woman and both as someone looking at women, especially when it comes from a place of empowerment. I don't really mind anyone showing off their body as long as they're the ones making that choice for themselves, and it makes sense. Truly, doing so can not only be a good showcase of confidence, but also of self-love and self-celebration, and that's hot to me. But this costume is just objectively ridiculous, because how does it stay on? I mean, I know that it's, you know, probably like a construct, likely created by Carol, so we can explain it away with what is basically like kind of cosmic magic. But imagine cosplaying this look. Imagine it. Just imagine you wearing this costume, and how does that work? Without added invisible straps or literal glue or tape, it becomes impossible. And for that reason, I have to call it dumb, because logically, in our world at least, where sadly there are no green or violet lanterns, it simply doesn't work as it appears. Also, I have only ever seen people successfully cosplay this look with invisible straps. Glue would likely damage your outfit, and honestly, it's really hard on your skin, I know, because I've worn it under costumes before, and tape would probably sweat off unless it was really cold out. And I know because I'm not a super sweaty person, and I've also worn tape before and experienced that. Which, you know, if you have to wear it in the cold too, you'd be really cold in this look. So really the only option is invisible straps, which clearly Carol doesn't need somehow in the comics, as she's never drawn with them. Unless maybe she is, but they're invisible so we don't see them. Even invisible straps, you usually see them, so just makes no sense. Number 2. The Crossing Wasp. I don't just want to talk about the Crossing here, folks, but as ridiculous as Thor's look is, Wasp is possibly even more wild. Now, she kinda had two looks as well. The one she wore at the beginning, which is kind of like a metallic bodysuit that somehow like fits her like spandex, and possibly even has a metal pocket on the legs. I'm not sure. I saw that in one of the panels I was looking at, and I was like, wait a minute, does she have like metal cargo pants that are skin tight? It looks like a pocket to me. The second is after she's resurrected in Avengers issue 394 and comes back literally looking like a pink bug woman with bright pink hair and bright pink wings. Number 1. Original Peacemaker. I have to say, I really love how dumb this look is, and I love that we managed to somehow keep it in the DCU almost one for one. The reason why I went with the original version of Peacemaker's costume from his days at Charlton Comics isn't just because of the white pants, which to me are an absurd fashion choice to make when you know you're headed into a fray. Wearing white pants in general for me is like a huge thing. I'm a messy person in my day-to-day, so I can't imagine getting into a fight with white pants on. But the other thing that I really think is strange about this that really gets me is the weird giant helmet. It looks like there's like a thick doorway sitting on top of Peacemaker's head. Number 10. Spider-Man's 2021 hoodie suit. Spider-Man's 2021 hoodie costume is definitely an odd one. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this one didn't bother me myself too much. There are parts of it I actually kind of like. I actually really like his shoes, but I do know people who pretty passionately felt that this look is ridiculous. And I'm including it because I value the specific person's opinion who actually even mentioned that to me, and I think they made a fair point for why it was so silly, so I'm going to indulge. The Spider-Man we are talking about here is of course Miles Morales, and the look we're talking about is the one he donned before this current look that he's in right now, which is kind of a return to more of his classic look. I like to call this specific look though his hoodie costume, although to be fair that's a little confusing because he has another hoodie costume, but anyways, Hoodie 2021. It basically looks like he's wearing a hoodie with leggings and of course sweet kicks. Of course I will say this costume looks super comfy, which for me makes more sense than some of the other things that superheroes are known for wearing, but it also greatly deviates from his normally sleek design, which is I think what was missing for most who weren't fans of this look. While it is a bit goofy looking, especially with the leggings, which I gotta say I kind of agree, kinda wish he had looser pants to kind of match his hoodie, this costume was actually made by one of Miles' friends as a replacement, so at least it also had a reason for existing in the story. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us and you love talking about all the dumb, weird costumes by giving this video a thumbs up. I love dumb costumes. Number 9. Wonder Woman's secretary look. Forget the old. The new Wonder Woman is here, and she is depowered and working as a spy and business owner, baby. The kind of Wonder Woman you probably never really asked to see, but the 70s gave it to us anyways. Admittedly, the actual fashion sense of this look is pretty great, I gotta say. So although in some ways this is kinda dumb, I also feel like the actual fashion, amazing. And I mean all around throughout as well. But the fact that it comes with Diana not having her powers anymore is pretty tragic, which is why it's going to make our cut. Even though this was done in an effort to actually promote feminism at the time. The revamp was actually intended by the creative team behind it to encourage other women to strive for independence, and was actually pretty well executed, I gotta say. Even though taking away Diana's powers would in retrospect be seen as a downgrade for the character in regards to her history. Which is why this makes our cut, even though I understand what they were trying to do was not that, but it unfortunately ended up being seen as a setback as opposed to a move forward for the character. Number 8. Martian Manhunter. This was really the only suggestion I got from the comments on our part 2. People were saying that we never talk about male characters in skimpy outfits and how those are dumb, and Martian Manhunter was one of the ones that was suggested. And I do agree that Martian Manhunter does have a weird outfit, but I also didn't know too much about his outfit and what it means, so I decided to look into it. And as I was expecting, while this outfit does look pretty ridiculous with Martian Manhunter's little shorts and his X-straps over his bare chest with his long flowy cape, it turns out there is actually a reason behind it, so it kinda does make sense. Martian Manhunter being a shapeshifter, it's as I expected, and apparently his clothes are actually just him, because he's a shapeshifter. It's just a weird thing to think about. His suit therefore is something he chose to shapeshift into, and it seems to be inspired by the heroes around him. Martian Manhunter in his normal form actually looks more alien even than we know him to look, and is a little bit more spiky. And so his appearance on Earth is actually him trying to stay true to his Martian heritage, while still shifting his appearance somewhat to look more humanoid, so he'll be more accepted, and he makes himself look like he's wearing clothes that he feels makes him look heroic, as that's what he wants to be. He wants to be a hero. So if you think Martian Manhunter dresses weird, it's really kind of a reflection of how Martian Manhunter sees most male superhero costumes and just superhero costumes in general, and maybe the way that we see them. In fact, I definitely see inspiration in his look from another alien superhero, Superman. You know, with his green skin and his little booty shorts shorts, which sometimes are like little briefs. It's kind of got a Superman vibe to it a little bit. Number 7. Susan Storm's cutout suit. Oh boy. This is a 90s classic in some of the worst ways, I think I can safely say. Now, I love a woman in a sexy costume, but this one is a lot, even for me. And what's worse, they made it narratively so that Sue designed this one herself, which feels not right for the character, but hey. If that feels pretty out of character for Sue, who refers to feeling like an old frump in her previous suit, you're not alone in thinking that, by the way. Many people like to defend this costume by actually saying that narratively its creation makes sense because it came from her evil persona Malice, actually, who was still possessing and influencing Sue at the time, and that this is actually an indicator of that. Well, this might be true, I'm still skeptical as to this being the real reason outside of the canon for this redesign. And even if that is the only reason she had this suit, I still don't really like it, because as a Sue Storm fan, it doesn't actually come from Sue herself, but from Malice, who was controlling her at the time. Which I know Malice is kind of like a part of her, but it's like the evil part of her, so there's really not as much agency here for Sue. Number 6. Vision. Marvel Comics initially had a completely different character who is known as the hero Vision. This was actually back, I believe, when they were Timely, before they were known as Marvel Comics. Marvel Comics would ultimately, of course, ditch their original version of the character and later get a completely new version, an android instead of an alien, who would end up as the Vision we know and love today. Not only is this original Vision's costume a product of the times, that insanely thick gold belt that he's wearing, but if you consider Martian Manhunter's costume to be ridiculous, Vision likely inspired that look, having a similar origin and a similar appearance initially, and appearing 15 years earlier in the comics in 1940, whereas Martian Manhunter, I believe, first appeared in 1955, so yeah. Number 5. Mangaverse Black Cat. Mangaverse Black Cat has a pretty wild look. To be fair to the universe, this one fits, I would say, in regards to, you know, a manga look, but boy oh boy is it strange when you think of Black Cat's standard look over on Earth 616. I mean, Black Cat has always been a sexy character, as many are in comics, but she doesn't usually have quite a deep v-neck. I'm not sure how exactly this suit also really functions. It must be made of some very firm material or like glued into place for it to stay on. Also missing are the tufts of white fur we're used to seeing Felicia wear, which I actually do miss. I really like those. I still feel like those could have been incorporated in some way in this look, but I guess they wanted to move away from having this version of the character look too similar to her, you know, 616 counterpart, which honestly, fair enough, but still the deep V and the super long claws for me feel pretty weird. Maybe it's just because I'm not as into manga as I used to be, I don't know, but that's where we're at. Number 4. Doctor Strange, a new Sorcerer Supreme. The 90s was a time when many folks got new looks. Some of them were, no, actually almost all of them were pretty terrible. But that's why we love them, right? Steven was not exempt from this. He got one of the most mystical 90s looks after years of having what I would say was a relatively unchanged costume. It didn't change that much, and even today it's kinda got a similar vibe. His costume was tweaked here and there, but usually for the most part it's just been slightly updated. But this was a pretty crazy refresh for him. His hair was even different. This transformation took place in issue number 75 of Doctor Strange Sorcerer Supreme, where Steven revealed himself at the end as the true Doctor Strange. The sunglasses are what really get me with this one, though honestly, kinda wanna cosplay as 90s Strange now. I mean, what a vibe. Also, I love that he comes out and he's like, the sun, I must put on sunglasses. To make sense of why he's wearing sunglasses. Which, I mean, you know, you gotta make sense of that, otherwise how am I supposed to accept as a reader? Number 3. Starfire from Red Hood and the Outlaws. Based on how the comments looked for part 2, I can already feel the animosity surrounding this point just building up. Just for me even mentioning it. I could end the point here and I feel like people would rage. But regardless, I'm gonna dive into my perspective of this one anyways, because, well, I mean, that's what I'm here to do, so that's what we're gonna do. Talking about costumes that I think are somewhat dumb, and so we're gonna get into that. As I've said before though, and I will say again, again, dumb to me doesn't always mean bad. It can mean illogical, silly, or contradictory. It doesn't necessarily mean bad. I love a lot of bad costumes myself, so they're not bad, they're just, I don't know, on paper good. Does that make sense? While I don't actually mind the design, I do think this look for Starfire was a bit much. I do think Starfire makes sense wearing less based on her energy absorption abilities. However, that being said, her first costume was basically just like a one-piece swimsuit with some cutouts. This is like not even a bikini level of coverage. It's like a bikini bottoms with cutouts with like a collar, shoulder thing, and pasties. And I mean, it's definitely an homage to that original look, but they undressed it even more for like really no reason. Add in the fact that Starfire was also an amnesiac at the beginning of this run, and I feel like we could have done better by Corey here. It would actually be less ridiculous to me if Corey was the one to have chosen this with all her memories attached. Then it would actually have some agency. This was kind of just a weird time in general for her character. Also, because it bears repeating, apparently, I am not critiquing the outfit because it is sexy. It's more the issue of how extreme it is and what was going on for Starfire in the story when she wore this look. I like sexy costumes. I like characters who wear sexy costumes. That's all fine with me. Number 2, Superman's t-shirt and jeans look. I mean, what even is this look? I understand wanting to modernize your character's appearance and give them something totally different, but a t-shirt and jeans just seems a little too low-key. And I know it had a narrative explanation, but still, it's pretty ridiculous. This is the outfit Superman wore when he drove around the US on a motorbike. He couldn't fly at the time, and what a time it was. I will say though, this one would be really easy to cosplay at least, so it gets some points for that, because I mean, anyone could do this look. I could do this look. I could be this Superman. Number 1, Red Sonja's chainmail bikini. Now of course, I have cosplayed as Red Sonja, but even I can admit that her outfit is pretty ridiculous. And I say this with much love for this outfit. The whole point of wearing chainmail is to protect you, so wearing it in a bikini form, it doesn't really make any sense. The only thing I can say about this that kinda makes sense is Red Sonja really doesn't care what other people think of her, so I could see her wearing a chainmail bikini because you just didn't care, but it's not good armor, you know what I mean? And sure, it's an iconic look that I will happily wear any day of the week, well as long as I'm feeling like wearing a chainmail bikini, but that doesn't change how goofy it is, as is evident by many of those who write and draw her, changing up what she wears inside the comics while kind of saving that iconic look more for either a single moment in a story or just for the cover. So I feel like even creative teams acknowledge this.
Kicking off the list today at number 10 is Valkyrie from the Ultimate Comics. Valkyrie is an incredibly capable warrior and is probably one of the strongest members of the Ultimates, but she wasn't always that way. Initially, Barbara Norris was just a 19-year-old girl with no actual powers who was obsessed with superheroes, specifically Thor. She did have some novice level martial arts skills though, and she used those as a member of the Ultimate Universe's Defenders, who were really just wannabe superheroes. They went off pretending to be superheroes for clout, essentially, until Loki gave them all real powers. She then eventually joined the Ultimates, but all the while she was claiming to be an incredibly capable warrior, she was suited up to go tanning, basically. Valkyrie initially was pretty scantily clad for most of her appearances. Later on, after working with the Ultimates for a bit longer and having some real training with real Asgardians, she would begin to armor up to bring her more in keeping with someone who is actually engaging in armed combat on the daily, but for a good chunk of time she was jumping into battle extremely unprepared. Maybe coming back from the afterlife taught her armor was kind of useful, but I think the change in her costume could actually also kind of show her character's growth in a weird kind of way.
And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love when we talk about ridiculous suits that people wear, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9, Death's Head. Death's Head is a character more prominently featured in Marvel UK, who honestly looks like he just stepped out of Reboot to me. Or rather, Reboot's Megabyte looks like he may have taken a page out of Death's Head's book when it comes to his look, I should say, since Reboot actually came out after Death's Head first appeared and was created over at Marvel Comics UK. And while I do think Death's Head's look is very extreme and exaggerated, which is why he is going to make my cut here, I will say it does kind of make sense when you learn that he first made his appearance in Transformers issue 113. I mean, he does kind of have that extreme Transformers look. But Death's Head himself is not actually a Transformer. He's a robotic bounty hunter actually, although he prefers being called like basically a peacekeeper. But you know, bounty hunter, peacekeeper, I guess those terms are interchangeable. But while you might be wondering if he can even make the cut as a hero, yeah, he pretty much does. He's basically like a bounty hunter with a moral code, sorry, a peacekeeping person with a moral code. So walking the line of being a hero, I'd say. Although I'm kind of now wondering if he fits the suit criteria, as his suit is really his body, but I'm gonna count it because, you know, many robots, they don't really wear suits, so it's weird to think about, but you know, many robots are kind of just walking around like kinda naked.
Number 8. Armored Daredevil. Matt Murdock has been through a lot of redesigns. As one of the most popular Marvel heroes, that does make sense. His first initial change from yellow to fully red stuck through basically until the modern day, but in between then and now, Marvel still flirted with several other ideas. After getting a pretty brutal beatdown at the hands of the Wild Pack, Daredevil decided that maybe a little armor would be a good choice. He faked his own passing as Matt and then designed himself a new red and black suit with prominent silver plating on his shoulders, knees, and up the sides of his legs for extra protection. Now, if I'm honest, I think this suit that first appeared in Daredevil number 321 in 1993 actually looks pretty cool. Maybe I'm weird, but something about it just feels like yes. I will admit, for a character who's pretty dependent on stealth though, it may not make the most sense, and it was rather flashy, but he still used it for a decent chunk of time, and I'm sure the extra protection came in handy a few times when he used it to fight villains like Hellspawn. Thank God he went back to just the red though. That's the classic, and I like that.
Number 7. Professor X and his Shi'ar exosuit. Professor X's Shi'ar exosuit, oh my. So this is one I personally find to be kind of silly, more because of my own headcanon to be honest, so go with me here. I don't know why this manifested for me, but when I was looking back on that fight against Magneto where Wolverine gets the adamantium ripped from his bones and Professor X as a result shuts down Magneto's brain basically, I saw this suit and I couldn't stop seeing it, and it lives still in my memory and in my heart every time I think of Professor X, really. And maybe because it's a 90s comic look, maybe because of how bulky it kind of looks to me, I don't know, but I just imagined it as being like a slow moving clunky suit that like allows Charles to walk but also doesn't save much time. Like he's walking like this, like he's like I don't know why I imagine that, but that's what I do. Also, the idea of Charles possibly wearing something made of metal to go up against Magneto in a fight, I thought that was pretty ridiculous. Although apparently this suit is like somehow like telepathically fueled, which I don't know, must be a Shi'ar thing. However, this never came up in the fight, the fact that his suit is maybe made of metal. I still don't really know for sure what this exosuit is made out of. At the end of the day, Charles technically won against Magnus, so maybe he knew something I don't know about this suit. Or maybe it's like metal, but like, I don't know, it's protected from certain abilities because it's made by the Shi'ar. It looks like metal. I don't know.
Number 6. The nipple suit. Batman relies heavily on his tech. His Batsuit is probably the most important of that tech. It's highly advanced in terms of supersuits, and it's constantly being improved and added to. Sometimes it gets a tech overhaul to battle a villain, like the Zebra suit. Sometimes it will get a redesign to better personify where Bruce is at in his life. Kinda like the Zur-En-Arrh suit. But of all the suits donned by Bruce Wayne, one stands above the rest. And all it took was the addition of a pair of nipples. In both Batman Forever from 1995 and Batman and Robin from 1997, the director, Joel Schumacher, decided that he wanted his heroes to emulate human perfection, and so he was inspired by statues of Greek gods and heroes. This is why both of his Batsuits worn by Val Kilmer and George Clooney have a shiny, muscle-adorned physique and, of course, nipples. It's really a very small detail, and if it wasn't for a close-up shot of just the chest and its extremely prevalent nipples, I might not have even noticed. But when you realize they are there, you realize that no other superhero has nipples built into their costume. This one is just iconic.
Number 5. Nightwing, red suit. Oh boy, the New 52 was a time of reinvention for a lot of characters, but then, on the other hand, it was also a time of radical change for pretty much, in most cases, really no reason. Which is kind of what happened to poor Nightwing here, because the New 52 was supposed to be giving us fresh new takes on characters. DC decided to completely revamp his look by going from his classic blue to red, which really seemed to serve no purpose that I can see myself, other than to be a very different color than the one we're used to seeing Dick wear as Nightwing, because well, I mean, it's very different. I mean, red has always been more of Jason's, or I would say even maybe Damian's color in my mind when it comes to former and current Robins, and even after donning this new suit, it was almost immediately discarded as Dick Grayson's secret identity was revealed, prompting him to change his hero name from Nightwing to just Grayson, and ditching the suit as well, with with all that change. So really, what even was the point of this?
Number 4. Black Condor. When Black Condor first popped up on the scene in DC Comics, his choice of garb was interesting. Richard Grey Jr. gained the power of flight from being exposed to a radioactive meteor, though he believed he had developed flight naturally after being raised by a flock of wild condors. Yes, really. So clearly there is a level of, how should we say this, creativity here. Like, he came back into society and then took someone else's identity while also being a costumed hero, and I think his superhero costume perfectly exemplifies how utterly off the rocker this guy actually is. Richard took to wearing a cape that draped out under each arm, being attached to his wrists with bracelets giving the semblance of wings, because he can fly. Get it? I'm sure that could probably have had some kind of effect on his flying, but the rest of the getup is kind of a mystery. Essentially, he wears a neck collar thing that looks kind of like a hood that connects to his big chunky belt with one piece of fabric in the front, and he accompanies that with some short shorts and some really ornate looking boots. Those are really cool. And that's kind of it. Luckily, later iterations of the character took their look in some much more cooler directions, but at first it was kind of weird.
Number 3. Emma Frost in Humans vs. X-Men. Emma Frost's look following in Humans vs. X-Men is something that I think is dumb, because I kind of think what happened to her character in that story was kind of dumb. Although, as someone who really enjoys Emma and enjoys her, in more of a hero role, it makes sense that I would feel that way. People who might be more fans of Emma in a villain role may have actually kind of liked what happened with her character in this story, and honestly, if you like it, that's fine. But I think either way, we can all agree, regardless of what this costume represents for the character, that it is objectively a pretty terrible costume. It honestly makes me think of what Emma cosplaying as Penance might look like. This mainly black look was one Emma donned near the end of Inhumans vs. X-Men, after it was revealed that Emma had, basically been manipulating the X-Men and mutant kind into fighting against the Inhumans. It also featured a combo Cyclops and Magneto style helmet that also kind of reminds me of Professor X's Krakoan era Cerebro helmet look. While the helmet may work on those other characters, it just doesn't really work for me with Emma. I just feel like a helmet for her is a weird choice.
Coming in at number 2, it's Catwoman. The history of Catwoman's look is a long and honestly incredibly kind of odd story. Over time, she would go through a number of looks until it eventually became a leather suit which had a more practical vibe, matched with a pair of cat eyes goggles, and it became the character's most popular costume, with later redesigns all primarily retaining the key elements of that suit. But in the very beginning, Selena Kyle was just a woman in a green dress that was also a thief. That kind of checks out for the comics at the time, and it also felt kind of unique in my opinion. Compared to all the other zany villains, she kept it rather low key, but that wouldn't last. Eventually, in 1940's Batman number 3, Selena Kyle donned an orange costume with a cape with the super great addition of a terrifying full cat face mask. This was basically like a mascot's headpiece, but a bit smaller, which I'm sure made it more practical, but for me, it's utter nightmare fuel. I don't know what it is about animal heads on human bodies, but I am not here for it. Basically, she kept the dress element that she started with, but now, it was orange, with an incredibly high popped up collar, and it was combined with a huge reddish orange cape and tiny little blue heels for added comfort. Then she topped it all off with a terrifying full headpiece, and now I have to watch videos of puppies before I go to sleep at night. Thanks a lot.
Number 1. The Real Lobo from New 52. The Real Lobo. Oh boy. New Lobo, who dis? Although there have been quite a few New 52 redesigns that I've discussed on this series of lists where we talk about dumb costumes, Lobo probably takes the cake here. The whole new look he had when he was revealed as the real Lobo in the New 52, the first version to appear was initially said by this Prime Earth Lobo to have been an imposter, was so different from the original and so serious that it completely ruined the character for a lot of people. I will say I do think this design is objectively pretty cool. Like, I think this character looks great, but it's not Lobo. This doesn't No, just not for Lobo. For Lobo, this is objectively ridiculous.
At number 10, we have the Rainbow Batman suit from Detective Comics number 241. This is the suit where we get to see Bruce Wayne's fashionista persona as he gets to fight crime in all sorts of different colored suits, from green to purple to yellow to white to red, which on the cover looks more like a neon pink to me. And of course, rainbow. Now, you might wonder why the Dark Knight would want to wear all these costumes, but as always when it comes to Batman, the explanation is is purely logical and slightly convoluted. See, the Bat Diva did this in order to draw attention towards himself and away from Robin, who earlier had performed a heroic act as Dick Grayson, pushing a girl out of the way of a speeding car and injuring his arm in the process. And since Batman don't believe in work from home culture, and to his credit it is the 50s, he takes the money he would have spent on Robin's paid leave and cops himself some new fancy outfits so that no one would pay attention to Robin's arm and realize his secret identity. If you're enjoying the video so far, do me a quick solid and support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. Goes a long way. Thanks guys. At number 9 we have Raven's New 52 redesign from Teen Titans number 17. Raven's original cloak is simple, elegant, and iconic, and so to recapitulate that essence for the New 52, they took all that and put it in the garbage and just went, Raven? Needs feathers. Listen, I know she's supposed to be gloomy and mysterious and whatnot, but covering her face completely is stupid, and what they covered it with looks ridiculous. Not to mention the whole bird theme as a whole is severely uninspired. And also the knee pads. Why does she need freaking knee pads? Heck, if you're gonna take it that far, you might as well throw in some elbow pads, shin guards, and a jock strap for good measure. Morons. At number 8 we have Cyborg Spider-Man from Spider-Man number 21. This is probably the most 90s Spider-Man costume out there, though I wouldn't be surprised if one of you guys in the comments proved me wrong. Solo nearly ended Spider-Man, believing him to be Doc Ock thanks to an illusion cast onto him by Mysterio. But Peter was rescued in the nick of time by Cyborg X, who took him to Care Labs to get fixed up, where he would awake with a new metal cast, an eyepiece, and some stitches. He was even gifted a utility belt, though Spidey never puts this one to use. And while the original version of the Cyborg suit is disbanded fairly quickly, probably on account of it being so hard to look at, it's worth mentioning that a Pete from a different timeline decided to go all in with the cybernetic enhancements, leading to a truly cyborg Spider-Man whose costume is seriously done right. We're even gonna get a fresh take of the character on screen in the next Spider-Verse movie with Cyborg Spider-Woman, and I'm all about it. Well, save for the spiky shoulder guard. Personally, I feel it's a little bit out of place, but maybe we'll get a good enough explanation for it in the movie, but probably not. At number 7, we have the Superman Unchained armor from Superman Unchained number 7. Okay, look, we can all agree that the Unchained armor is undoubtedly badass looking. That's not my point here. My gripe is the fact that Superman's wearing it. You see, Kal dons the armor when he realizes that he's vulnerable to attack from the weapons wielded by General Lane's army. And the suit, which comes with a hammer and shield, is able to withstand a few blows that supposedly would have one-shot the Man of Steel. Okay then, so why does he need a shield? He is Superman after all. It's not like he needs anything other than his fists for combat. Or better yet, why doesn't he just ditch the suit altogether and just keep the shield, as it proves to be far more effective at sponging blows from Lane's weapons than the armor is. And don't even get me started on the hammer, which is literally only there to rip off Mjolnir. Not to mention how uncharacteristic and lazy it is of Superman just to put on thicker armor when a greater threat presents itself. Because it would have been much more satisfying to see Superman outwit his opponent instead of just out-tanking him. Like, okay, DC, listen up. Maybe you can use this design for some sort of Thor, Darth Maul, Megazord hybrid character, but Superman, guy doesn't need it. Give it to someone else. At number 6, we have Iron Man's nose from Iron Man number 68. There's change in the air. I can smell it. One of the most iconic examples of a redesign gone wrong, we have that period of time where Tony Stark thought it would be a good idea to include a nose in his mask to make him look more expressive and help strike fear into the heart of his enemies. Buddy, the only thing you're striking me with is an intense desire to laugh in your face, because let's face it, the addition of a big metal nose ain't exactly intimidating. Now you might be wondering why Marvel would even give him a nose in the first place. Well, the story goes that one day Stan Lee was complaining about one of the studio's new artists. See, Stan thought that Tony's eyes were too close to the surface of the helmet for there to be any room for a nose underneath the mask, and so Stan asked, where's his nose? The editors took this to mean that Iron Man should have a nose, and so they gave him one. That is, until Stan caught wind of the change a few issues later and demanded that the editors change it back. At number 5, we have Hawkeye's tunic in Avengers number 72. Good lord, dude! Pants! Not only is Hawkeye one of the bravest Avengers on account of him being super powerless, but to stand shoulder to shoulder with Earth's mightiest heroes in what's effectively a dress is a whole new level of courage. Not to mention that this was right after some very questionable decisions led to Hank Pym turning Hawkeye into the size-changing Goliath. Not to mention that this was right after some very questionable decisions that led to Hank Pym turning Hawkeye into the size-changing Goliath, who sports an equally decisive costume, that one including those redundant bolted shoulder and waist straps. Sorry to say, buddy, but this fit just makes you look arrogant. Arrogant? No? Okay, I tried. At number 4, we have Captain America's exoskeleton, debuting in Captain America number 438. On yet another edition of Why Does This Hero Need a Whole Suit of Armor, we have Captain America. And while his excuse is a little better than Superman's, it's still pretty lame. You see, Steve Rogers became completely paralyzed by an illness brought on by the very super soldier serum that granted him his superpowers in the first place. And so in order to allow Cap to continue his crime-fighting career, Tony Stark fashioned him this exoskeleton. And after getting some implants that would enable him to operate it, Cap was back in action. Now, I've included this one on the list because the whole concept is a bit ridiculous. I mean, super soldier serum induced paralysis just makes the serum itself completely redundant. Like, if you wanted to give Cap an Iron Man suit, just give Cap an Iron Man suit and do away with the whole degenerative disease nonsense. I mean, Spidey got an Iron Man suit, more than one, and he didn't need to get paralyzed to earn it. At number 3, we have Plaid Daredevil. Okay, this next one is seriously cruel, and if you laugh, your soul is going straight to Mephisto. This panel comes from What If Volume 2 number 17, the comic that asks, what if Daredevil had a dishonest tailor? To which Kingpin and Punisher are seen laughing in his face. See, I think this is dumb not because of the plaid, although it is pretty ugly, but because it's uncharacteristic. You see, Daredevil wouldn't have gotten ripped off. He can't. He can literally smell fear and dishonesty. It's what makes him such a good lawyer. So either this universe's Daredevil is missing one of his most crucial hyper senses, or he's Canadian. Either way, it's nothing to laugh about. At number 2, we have Hulk, the Horseman of War from Incredible Hulk number 456. That's right, not only has Hulk been a villain, an Avenger, a space gladiator, and the conqueror of entire planets, but now we can add first non-mutant war horseman of the apocalypse to his resume as well. His armor, made from celestial tech, allows him to accomplish feats of strength with ease, which the irregular Hulk would probably find at least a little strenuous, like picking up and tossing an entire Egyptian pyramid, for instance. His helmet also has the added bonus of calming his inner demons, allowing the Hulk to become more cold and calculated. And if I'm being honest with you guys, the real reason I included this costume on the list is because it makes Hulk look like a jacked version of Marvin the Martian. Am I the only one who's made this connection? Can't be. And at number 1, we have Mangaverse's Black Panther, who made his very first in-costume appearance in Marvel Mangaverse Eternity Twilight. The Marvel Mangaverse has plenty of questionable redesigns. I'm looking at you, Spider-Gloves. But when it comes to the King of Wakanda, boy oh boy did they do him dirty. See, instead of utilizing the vibranium of his homeland to build himself a supersuit, T'Challa of Earth 2301 seems to have replaced his sacred herb powers with the spirit of Kwamatha, transforming him into a furry. As if things weren't furry enough with Tigra around, who, after watching T'Challa transform, immediately gets the heart-shaped eyes for him, anime style. Okay, look, maybe I wouldn't have so much hate for the suit if there was a suit to begin with, as the King's suggestively shaped loincloth leaves very little to the imagination, and the bat ears. Ugh, why is he the only anthropomorph with hyper-realistic ears?
In at 10, Joker. The Joker, an infamous and highly dangerous psychopathic crime lord operating within Gotham City, reigns supreme as the pinnacle of the city's criminal underworld. Okay, his reputation inspires fear among his fellow crime bosses and wrongdoers, including his long-standing adversary Roman Sionis. Devoid of empathy or compassion, the Joker orchestrates wicked schemes through intimidation and deception, showing no mercy for those in his malevolent plots. However, there was a time where he held a deep affection for his on-again off-again girlfriend and partner in crime, Harley Quinn. The Joker went to great lengths to rescue her from the clutches of Task Force X and Amanda Waller, eventually succeeding in that mission, but I think we all know the reason he's on the list is because what the actual hell does he look like in the Suicide Squad movie? I mean, like, okay, I get that it's an interpretation, but the Joker as like a mob mob boss. Come on, he's trying to be the godfather of Gotham in this, and that's not something that he would normally really do, okay? Plus, we all didn't like this movie or this portrayal, so I think it's a safe villain to start off with. And at 9, Sandman. William Baker, also recognized as Flint Marko and renowned by his supervillain moniker of Sandman, is a prominent character and antagonist within the Marvel Comics universe. He's often depicted as a nemesis to Spider-Man, possessing the extraordinary ability to control and manipulate sand, which also makes up his body. Following an unforeseen accident involving radioactive materials, and of course it is, Flint Marko's DNA underwent a transformation, aligning with the chemical composition of like tiny rocks and minerals. This alteration gave him the ability to manipulate every particle of his being, enabling him to fashion himself into like weapons and his fists into like giant fists. He can also pick locks, he can assume different forms and like different entities in like a shape-shifting way. He can even amass additional sand to manifest just a huge version of himself. But the reason that this is a dumb costume is because he's made entirely out of sand, yet is somehow always fully clothed. I get that he can manipulate the sand, but when he does, it becomes sand-like. Like when he's making a fist, like a bigger fist, it looks like sand. So how does he have actual clothes? It doesn't make sense. It shouldn't be possible. In at 8, Catwoman. Catwoman, a criminal with a feline motif hailing from Gotham City, stands as one of Batman's most renowned adversaries. Selina Kyle, the alter ego behind Catwoman, assumes the role of a thief and a cat burglar, known for her ambivalent loyalties. While engaging in criminal activities, Selina also occasionally exhibits reluctant altruism, blurring the lines between like actually being a villain and sometimes an ally. And I mean, like, following the impact of the Hush storyline in 2002, Catwoman is often portrayed as an anti-hero who's like an ally to Batman more so maybe she doesn't necessarily appear on this list. But the first costume that she has, first appearing in 1940 as the Cat, her outfits were not as iconic as they are today, let's say. Okay, I mean, she literally wore a mask that was like a cat mascot head. It was like the high school bully decided to go and try to rob a bank. Yeah, it was an interesting take, to say the least. And at 7, Original Galactus. Galactus, a cosmic entity, possesses an insatiable appetite for the energy harbored within planets, which serves as his sustenance. In his quest, he designates individuals known as heralds, such as Silver Surfer, to search for suitable worlds and then endows them with formidable cosmic powers. Originating from a universe preceding the current one, Galactus was initially a Tan named Galan. As his universe neared its end, Galan encountered the sentience of the cosmos, a precursor to eternity. Through fusion with the cosmic essence, Galactus emerged in the subsequent cycle after a period of gestation, assuming his current form. Recently, Thor managed to slay Galactus, but his revival occurred when the Destroyer reanimated his lifeless body and Galactus consumed the energy from a Macron crystal. It's a whole thing. After he was reborn, he craves knowledge rather than worlds, but his original costume didn't have the pants that we see on him today, okay? Meaning that most people would have quite the interesting view as he is literally eating their world. And at 6, the Riddler. Edward Nygma, a brilliant criminal mastermind, assumes the moniker of the Riddler. He descends into villainy after his idol Bruce Wayne rejected one of his inventions, leaving Nygma embittered and driven towards a life of crime for some reason. Utilizing his expertise, he transforms into a deranged dude who's just delighted in leaving perplexing riddles as his calling card. And Jim Carrey portrays the Riddler in one of the Batman films. I forget which one it was called, okay, don't get mad at me. Citing Frank Gorshin as a significant influence of his portrayal. Carrey was particularly drawn to the stalker aspect that was incorporated into the character's depiction within the script. Like, Nygma's infatuation with Bruce Wayne was prominently showcased, and he becomes fixated on his idol, like even going to the extent of emulating Wayne's appearance, including a facial mole. He intervenes to like prevent Two-Face from executing Wayne. This dude, it's a sparkly leotard, okay? There's no getting around that. He is literally wearing a bedazzled bodysuit that's like the biggest discount Lady Gaga morph suit you could get at Spirit Halloween. It's insane. Halfway through into number 5, the Mandarin. The individual commonly known as the Mandarin is a formidable warlord and criminal mastermind, harboring a desire for global dominance, cause you know, of course he is. Born into destitution, the Mandarin's unyielding ambition propelled him to great heights when he chanced upon a set of alien artifacts known as the 10 Rings. Each ring he wore on his fingers bestowed upon him a distinct and extraordinary power, so of course he's gonna leverage the abilities and make a crime empire, because that's what you do when you find 10 rings that give you superpowers. Assuming the persona of a nobleman and asserting his lineage as like a descendant of Genghis Khan, his might originates with the 10 rings, but like, yeah, sure, he can do martial arts and he's like a swordsman and whatever, but like, he's just the rings, really, okay? Damn, if you go back and look at the original costume, it's some seriously stupid attire. Okay, he goes from that to a suit, so talk about a glow up, but my god. In at 4, Crazy Quilt. After his eyes were injured in a robbery, Crazy Quilt underwent an experimental procedure which resulted in him seeing nothing but blindingly bright color. This, of course, is going to turn him into an insane criminal. How insane? Well, first of all, he tried to steal color itself, which no one ever figured out how he planned to do. Second of all, his powers were basically having a constant LSD trip, which affects exactly no one beside himself. Even when Crazy Quilt got a helmet that allowed him to project his crazy eye-colored lights at his foes, Cyclops style, all Batman and Robin needed to do was reflect his beams back with a mirror and he was done. And in all honesty, I don't think that Batman needs to do much to actually really beat him. I mean, the dude calls himself Crazy Quilt. I think that says enough about the kind of person that he is. I don't know a single person who is scared of quilts. What is that name supposed to do? You've been seeing his costume on screen, right? You know what he's wearing. Like, I get that you can only see blindingly bright colors, but why would you put them on if it's driving you literally insane? Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Dr. Doom's skin suit. Okay, now like Dr. Doom is a villain, okay? But like, damn, if this suit isn't just the worst. Doom acquired a mystical suit of armor through a pact made with the Hazareth 3. The precise details of this armor remained undisclosed, but to secure the armor, Doom had to surrender something irreplaceable as part of the agreement. He made the painful choice of sacrificing Valeria, the woman that he had deeply loved in his past. In a haunting encounter though, Doom manifested before her, bringing about her demise through magical means. He repurposed her skin, converting it into the leather material that is then made into his armor. Yeah, talk about trauma. Imagine trying to explain that one to your therapist. But ultimately, in at number 2, Captain Boomerang. Okay, now don't get me wrong, nowadays Captain Boomerang isn't really that bad, but the Silver Age is certainly something interesting. At the age of 18, Harkness and Wentworth executed a successful robbery in a general store, utilizing Harkness's skills with a boomerang to facilitate their escape. Unfortunately, this misdeed resulted in Harkness being expelled from his stepfather's home, so to aid in starting anew, his mother provided him with a plane ticket to Central City and advised him to contact Wiggins. Wiggins, in search for a spokesperson for WW, Wiggins Game Company's latest creation, a boomerang toy, found Harkness fitting for the role, adopting the alias of George Green. Harkness auditioned for the position and secured it, but Wiggins outfitted him with a costume and bestowed upon him the moniker of Captain Boomerang. But Harkness harbored ulterior motives for this new identity and then used all of that to just start stealing jewels, for which he was then captured by the Flash, because again, boomerangs versus super speed, not really a contest, but this is a costume that would certainly gain the attention of literally everyone, so I don't know why you would use it. And finally, in at number 1, Deadpool. Okay, hear me out, don't freak. Wade Wilson, okay, a mutant with extraordinary reflexes and agility, has served as a soldier and a mercenary, surpassing the capabilities of just a human. But in the X-Men Origins universe, in the midst of the Vietnam War, in late 1973, a young Wade was a member of an elite covert unit known as Team X, led by William Stryker. Among his comrades were Logan, Victor Creed, Christopher Bradley, Agent Zero, John Wraith, and Fred Dukes. Wade obediently carried out his leader's orders, even though Stryker often lamented his incessant talking, stating that Wade would be a flawless soldier if not for his mouth. But 6 years later, following the dismantlement of Team X, Wade was captured and transported to a facility on 3 Mile Island. Blah blah blah, things ensued. They turned the Merc with a mouth into the Merc. They sewed his mouth shut. You don't sew Deadpool's mouth shut. He is the Merc with a mouth. There is literally a version of him that is Headpool and is just a head, but he can still talk. You don't sew the Merc with a mouth shut. God, that's the dumbest thing that I've ever seen.